earlier, while facility investment plunged 14.2% in the largest fall since October 2020.
That's all for our news briefing today. Thank you for bringing us those stories.
Thank you.
The Constitutional Court wrapped up its 11th and final hearing in President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial last week in connection with the December 3rd martial law incident. The court is expected to announce its decision on whether to uphold or dismiss Yoon's impeachment as early as mid-March. As the nation grapples with the political fallout from the short-lived martial law declaration, protesters and politicians, both supporting and opposing Yoon's impeachment, gathered for large-scale rallies in Seoul on Saturday. The rallies, coinciding with the 106th anniversary of the March 1st independence movement, prompted the police to dispatch thousands of riot police and traffic officers on site. To take a look at the current political situation in more detail, we're joined by two guests. First, we have joining us on the line Brian Myers, Professor of International Studies at Dongsa University in Busan. Professor Myers, hello, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And in the studio today, we have a first-time guest with us. We have Dr. Park Tae-woo from the Institute for Liberal Unification at the Korea Freedom Federation. Dr. Park, hello and welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me here today. Thanks.
Yes, so actually, Dr. Park, let us start with you. The hearings have now ended at the Constitutional Court and we are now awaiting the court's verdict. What is your overall assessment of what we've seen? What's your overall assessment of the hearings at the Constitutional Court?
I think that overall assessment of the hearings at the Constitutional Court is estimated to be unfair and undemocratic. As everybody understands, the main purpose of the martial law declaration was to investigate the election fraud of the Central Election Commission. However, contrary to our expectation, the Constitutional Court judges did not accept President Yoon Suk-yeol's request to investigate the voters who actually voted and the list of voters in the voting machine. The court rather focused on the hearing procedures to ignore the main purpose of the martial law, to clarify who are the anti-state forces to make this country heading toward disaster, like a frog slowly boiling in a pot, unaware of the danger. Also, there are growing calls in the legal community for the Constitutional Court to dismiss the impeachment trial of President Yoon Suk-yeol. Typical legal scholar He Young, a chair professor at Gyeonggi University, who laid the theoretical foundation for the creation of the Constitutional Court, also who served as first president of the Constitutional Court, pointed out problems in the recent presidential impeachment trial one by one. And her opinion is that in overall terms, dismissal is correct. This is my opinion.
Right, so unfair and undemocratic. Professor Myers, what have you made of the hearings at the Constitutional Court?
Well, I think everything has been handled better than it was during the impeachment process for President Park. I think President Yoon has generally been treated more fairly than she was. But looking back over the past few weeks, I think it might have been a better strategy for the president and his legal team to admit that the proclamation of martial law was not justified, while at the same time arguing that President Yoon should be allowed to return to power anyway. After all, it isn't written in stone anywhere that a presidential violation of the Constitution must result in impeachment. And one could very well argue that much more serious violations of the Constitution have been committed by earlier administrations that did not result in impeachment. I think that this would have been a better strategy than trying to persuade the court that martial law was justified by objective conditions. I'm not sure if that has worked out very well so far.
Well, another famous lawyer, Yu Chang-jong, who was a prestigious senior jurist and former chief of the 2nd Central District Prosecutor's Office, also presented 3 reasons for dismissal. First of all, he pointed out that emergency martial law is the president's legitimate authority guaranteed by the Constitution, and it is not subject to judicial review as it falls under the so-called act of governing. So I think this emergency martial law did not actually violated the constitutional order. Also, he pointed out that the National Assembly should reject all the unfair the bills, if the president himself did not violate it, by the crimes of rebellion, something like that. So I think the crimes against President Yoon Suk-yeol itself is not having a valid ground to be judicially reviewed there. This is my opinion.
Professor Myers, President Yoon also delivered his closing statements in his impeachment trial last week, and he declared that the martial law to warn. He said he declared martial law to warn the people of the emergency that the nation is facing. He also insisted that the martial law situation in December was unlike those seen in the past, when the aim was to suppress the people by force. In addition, addressing the South Korean people, he apologized for the confusion and inconvenience it caused when he issued the decree, saying he did it for the good of the nation and that the people, but his intentions were misunderstood. What's your take on President Yoon's closing statement?
Well, I just found that closing statement to be not very helpful to his case because, sure, martial law is something which the Constitution allows for in the case of an emergency. But if you are saying that your goal was to warn people, then the question, of course, arises whether martial law is really the best way to warn people. Now, he had years in which to make his case.
And start a family
Of plus or minus 3.1 percentage points.
Actually, violated the constitutional order. Also, he pointed out that the National Assembly should reject all the unfair the bills, if the president himself did not violate it, by the crimes of rebellion, something like that. So I think the crimes against President Yoon Suk-yeol itself is not having a valid ground to be judicially reviewed there. This is my opinion.
Professor Myers, President Yoon also delivered his closing statements in his impeachment trial last week, and he declared that the martial law to warn. He said he declared martial law to warn the people of the emergency that the nation is facing. He also insisted that the martial law situation in December was unlike those seen in the past, when the aim was to suppress the people by force. In addition, addressing the South Korean people, he apologized for the confusion and inconvenience it caused when he issued the decree, saying he did it for the good of the nation and that the people, but his intentions were misunderstood. What's your take on President Yoon's closing statement?
Well, I just found that closing statement to be not very helpful to his case because, sure, martial law is something which the Constitution allows for in the case of an emergency. But if you're saying that your goal was to warn people, then the question, of course, arises whether martial law is really the best way to warn people. Now, he had years in which to make his case. North Korean influence on South Korean politics has been a historical constant here since 1945. Chinese influence is nothing new either. And the analogy which he used, which as an animal lover I don't like anyway, the talk about heading toward disaster like a frog boiling in a pot, that analogy says that things were happening very slowly, so slowly that people did not even realize that they were happening. Well, right there, you're basically implicitly admitting that it was not a very serious emergency. He needed to explain that he had exhausted all other possibilities of warning the public. But the question is, did he do that? I don't think so. He didn't talk very much about the fraudulent elections or the case for fraudulent elections in the run-up to declaring martial law. He didn't talk at any great length about North Korean influence on South Korean politics either. Basically, he seemed to be very isolated from the South Korean people, and then all of a sudden, in early December, he declared martial law. So I don't think that the closing statement really did a very good job of explaining why he had no choice but to declare martial law.
But I think that President Yoon Suk-yeol appealed to the people, all the errors the opposition Democratic Party has made. He said that the unconstitutional special prosecutor bill proposed by opposition party 27 times. Also, he said that to the people, the National Assembly, dominated by large opposition parties, has become a monster to destroy the constitutional order of liberal democracy and threatening national security and social security. Also he clarified that behind the reasons to declare the martial law by saying that impeachment against the chief of the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office and head of the Board of Audit and Inspection, which investigated all the election fraud and spying cases. This is against constitutional spirit. Also, after taking office for 2.5 years, I think he learned enough, to judge that South Korean democratic system is in such a democratic crisis. So we should do something, making people to realize, what we are, like a frog boiling in a hot pot, something like that.
Dr. Park,
there's a difference between a crisis and a terrible situation and an emergency, and I think that is a difference which I'm not sure that President Yoon was aware of when he made that closing statement. I would agree that there are serious concerns here. I'm not somebody who dismisses these allegations of fraudulent elections. I've listened to Hwang Kyo-han and Min Kyung-wook. I've listened to people who've argued these things, and I believe that that those elections need to be looked into very critically. I do have a certain amount of sympathy for President Yoon's case, but I do not think he did a good job of explaining why it's a sudden emergency which warrants martial law. Either there's an emergency, in which case martial law must be serious, or there's no emergency, in which case you should not be declaring martial law just to wake up people. Martial law should not be a propaganda device.
Well, Dr. Park, what do you make of the opinion polls at the moment, which say that the majority of people support Yoon's impeachment? According to the survey conducted by Gallup on 1,000 adults over 18 from last Tuesday to last Thursday, 59% said they supported Yoon's impeachment. 35% of the respondents said they were against Yoon's impeachment. The poll has a margin of error of plus or minus 3.1 percentage points, with a confidence level of 95%. What are your thoughts on this survey? And do you think these factors will have any impact on the outcome of the Constitutional Court's rulings?
Yes, South Koreans are influenced by opinion polls result, very much. And I have a doubt that how this kind of an opinion polls result came out. As far as I know, I don't mention today other opinion polls survey result, but the Gallup's opinion polls result, you read just before, does not come to my mind clearly, that because more and more people are demonstrating against impeachment, and more youngsters are coming out, spreading that we have to save South Korean democracy, especially we have to protect South Korea falling under the hands of Chinese Communist Party, and everybody feels probably those who do not feel this kind of very severe crisis on the South Korean democratic system does not really aware of this kind of serious situation. I don't want to mention the percentage of this opinion poll. This is my overall opinion regarding this.
Professor Myers, what have you made of the opinion polls, and also, as Dr. Park has mentioned, the growing perhaps support we've seen on the ground at the protests that we've seen across the country? They've become increasingly fervent in recent weeks. Do you think that will have any impact on the Constitutional Court's ruling?
I think it might have a certain impact. It's unrealistic of us to believe that judges are completely immune to external pressures. They're human beings just like the rest of us. And I think the conservatives were trying to create kind of an equal balance of intimidation, because usually the left wing dominates the streets, during times like this. And I think at the beginning of this crisis, everybody expected that the supporters of impeachment were going to vastly outnumber the opponents of impeachment. But I do also believe that the opponents of impeachment have turned out in very large numbers, but that is not necessarily an accurate reflection of the opinion around the country. And in a centralized state like South Korea, where everybody focuses on Seoul, it's easy to distort the true picture of public opinion simply by filling up Gwanghwamun and Yeouido with people that you bust in from different regions in the country. So I'm always skeptical of opinion polls, but I'm also skeptical of the turnout on the streets as well.
Well, one more thing I'd like to add is that out of this opinion poll, 70% of the middle class voted for impeachment, while 23% opposed impeachment. Well, I wonder whether really the middle of the roaders, rather,
right, moderates,
moderate, really tilting toward, impeachment. I have a strong doubt regarding this, but we have a very short time, so just raising question.
Well, Professor Myers, let's jump to how you think the outcome of President Yoon's impeachment trial, how it will end. Do you think he will be impeached? Do you think the court will uphold the impeachment in the end?
I do tend to think so, and the reason I tend to think so is because even though I think I am more sympathetic to President Yoon than the average left-wing South Korean is, I do not believe that the closing statement was made as persuasively as it should have been, and I do think that the case against President Yoon is certainly stronger than the case against President Park Geun-hye. If you ask people today, why was President Park impeached, you'll find that 9 people out of 10 cannot tell you coherently what the reason was that she was removed from power. Whereas the case against President Yoon, I think, is easier for a lot of people to understand. Most people believe that the circumstances did not warrant impeachment, and we know that 5 of the 8 judges are known to have progressive tendencies. There have even been concerns raised as to whether they should not have recused themselves because they're so ideologically opposed to this government. I am not sure that it will be a unanimous vote for impeachment, but I do believe that the impeachment will carry, that there will be at least 6 justices.
I don't agree with his view. I think he will not be impeached because he has not committed any crimes enough to be impeached. He declared an emergency decree to defend the Republic of Korea, which is free from the threat of North Korean communist forces, to eradicate the shameless pro-North Korean anti-state forces that are looting the freedom and happiness of our people at once, and to protect the free constitutional order. Then people are realizing this, and that justices at the Constitutional Court are becoming fully aware of this kind of situation. Through this emergency decree, Yoon wanted to rebuild and protect a free Korea that is falling into the abyss of ruin. So I think this was an inevitable measure to ensure the freedom, safety, and the national sustainability of people from the reaction and anti-state forces seeking to overthrow the system and to pass on a proper country to future generations. So I don't think he will be impeached.
Dr. Park, what do you think will happen if his impeachment is nullified and if his impeachment is upheld? What impact do you expect to see from the court's ruling?
If impeachment passed, if the court uphold his impeachment, I think very serious political situation could occur. A mass rioting could occur by the angry public. I watched on the first March Independence movement day that millions of people are coming out across the country. We have been watching the number of demonstrators and the supporting ratio to support Yoon increasing step by step, reaching almost 50%. I'm not mentioning in detail. So I think this kind of very unreasonable verdict to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol will cause strong riot by the people. And I think Korea-US alliance will be weakened also, and the Korea-US-Japan trilateral security framework will be seriously weakened to hurt the security and stability of the Korean Peninsula. This is my opinion. And if impeachment rejected, I think we will be preventing the collapse of the liberal democratic constitutional order and normalize the functioning of the state. Also, we could also expect some negative moves by the opposition forces with majority in the National Assembly continuing to cause some disorder in the constitutional spirit. Also, I'm predicting that if he's resuming his presidency, Yoon will gain strength to control the political instability to be caused by the opposition. Also, people will help President Yoon to control state affairs with more supporting rate. Also, I think, as he mentioned in his final statement, he will be performing political reforms, also the constitutional revisions with all the more powers from the people. All the politics will be stable, I think, after he is resuming his presidency again.
Yes, we should say that the protest in Seoul on Saturday, police unofficially estimated that up to 120,000 people participated in the rallies, not a million. But yes, we certainly get your point that many people have come out to support both President Yoon and to support impeachment as well. Professor Myers, what impact do you expect to see from the Constitutional Court's rulings on Yoon's impeachment trial?
Well, I believe that if he is impeached, then of course all eyes will turn to the trial of Lee Jae-myung, simply because President Yoon is impeached. That does not necessarily mean that everybody is going to rally behind Lee Jae-myung, and I think we may see even more of a power struggle break out on the left. I don't reckon with any great violence on either side, regardless of how the case goes. I think this country is not as polarized as the United States is, as my own country is. Koreans are, they have strong opinions on both sides, but they've generally behaved well towards each other. And I do not think that violence is going to get out of hand, regardless of which way things go. But I think if President Yoon manages to escape impeachment, then he's going to find himself, I believe, under pressure to usher in some form of constitutional revision. I think that the only way he will be able to continue ruling effectively will be if he brokers some kind of deal between the ruling party and the opposition party to bring about constitutional revision, which is something there's a lot of support for on both sides of the parliamentary aisle.
Well, we await the final ruling in the impeachment trial. In the meantime, we will see how high the tensions in the nation goes as well. We'll wrap it up there. We're speaking to Professor Brian Myers from Dongsa University and Dr. Park Tae-woo from the Korea Freedom Federation. Thank you both for your time today.
Thanks for inviting me.